that you can talk. I have to apologize because now I'm chairing the meeting. I wouldn't be able to address the technical issues continuously, but if anybody was watching there, just to continue to text Paul and he will try to work with folks to get you in there. Just a reminder that this is a committee that's established by Howard County Executive Order. So all the SAAC meetings are public meetings here. This will be streamed live at YouTube, but also the video will be posted at the county website. And I realize that this is a very big group. In fact, more than 20 people if we include advisors. So it's sometimes difficult to juggle everybody's schedule. It's quite normal for folks to miss one or two of the sessions there, which is fine. So far as you can continue to get yourself engaged by reading the materials in share folder and also follow the videos on the website. And whenever you attend the meetings here, chime in, provide feedback, that will be all welcome. In terms of today's meeting agenda, since this is a new committee, we have such a new faces here, so we'll go over the committee structure and process. It shouldn't take more than 5 to 10 minutes, and also provide you a quick update about the report of last year and where we are currently. Then I'm very pleased to say that I have colleagues join me today from our Department of Planning and Zoning. They will provide some interesting update for HOCO by Design, which is a very big undertaking by the county that has went through many years and recently get approved by the county council and with lots of public input. So they will provide some highlight. There's also a typical presentation usually provided by Jeff Ronald from DPZ as their research director to go over the demographic and development trends there, which the committee is always interested in. Today he is sick, but he provided me the presentation, so I will try to go over this for him. And at the end of that, depending on whether we have time, we may skip it. Originally, I included some future meeting schedulings as well as time for intro for those committee members there, but if we don't have time, we can do that next time. So quickly about the committee. The committee is established by the county executive order. It's essentially trying to offer nonpartisan and data-informed discussion and provide advice to county executive for both budget and debt affordability. We have a very, I would say, very diversified, very comprehensive structure. It's not unique for cities and county to have a mechanism like this. It usually called spending for the advisor committee, but ours is sort of different in a way that it's very big. We have, even committee members have 17, and if you have advisors, more than 20 people, and they represent different disciplines here. The reason it's so big is we want to engage everyone, represent a different line of business and important stakeholders there so that we can benefit from this collective wisdom of this virtual room. We also, I want to say that committee is tasked to make recommendations to the county executive by March 1st, and typically center on projected revenues, general obligation bond ceiling for the upcoming fiscal year, multi-year projections, and other fiscal issues. This is also broader than a typical spending for the advisory committee, which historically or in other jurisdictions you will find mostly just focus on revenue projection, a couple meetings, that's it. Here we are actually expanding that, try to essentially both exchange information, share information, and also gather input, a recommendation from everybody on different issues that has fiscal implications there. Because we are very fortunate to be in a community that's with a lot of experts, so we really appreciate the opportunity to do that. So last year, the SAAC report you can find in the county's website, but also we included in the share folder for this committee. It includes multiple recommendations there. So on the revenue side, the committee last year was recommending 73 million revenue growth. The final council approved the budget include about 84 million gross excluding one-time funding. It's a little bit different because between committee information and the final budget, there are new revenue information coming or economic information. So sometimes we have a little bit of adjustment. For geo debt, the committee last year was recommending a ceiling of 60 million. The final approved budget was 75 million, which is higher than the committee recommendation. But I did want to point it out that in the past few years, we have been working closely and we did hear what the committee have been saying, and we concur on the sentiment about try to execute discipline on the debt and try to be mindful of the overall debt burden of the county government. So we have been keeping the GO bond at about 72 to 75 million per year, which is actually lower than historical level. For the very reason the committee has been highlighted in the report that the county's debt has been growing and debt service as a percentage of overall general fund operating budget has been growing. So we're mindful, we try to put it under control. In terms of multi-year projections, there last year was projected 3.2% growth on average, which is moderate. Acknowledge of the fact that last few years the county has been doing surprisingly well on the revenue side, along with some other jurisdictions there, because of some temporary factors, no matter whether it's from the federal government or because of the economy, because of the stocks market there, and the committee was expressing that these are the things not going to be there forever. So they were just basically caution that the county government should plan ahead and make sure that the spending strategy is sustainable, and we try to avoid like the volatility in services, interruptions of services there. And these other recommendations are largely centered on that as well, about a mindset of long-term sustainability as well as balancing different needs. For example, the report mentioned that it's very important to address service needs, but there are all kinds of service needs from the community, represent different age group, represent different type of needs there. So you have to balance that. And also, while we all try to do our best to provide the services, at the same time, be mindful about taxpayers' tax burden. So you don't want to lose the competitiveness of the county or drive people away, especially in today's remote working environment there. So the tax burden is something we always have to keep in mind as well. So in general, the report was asking for a long-term cohesive approach there to look at a balanced multi-year fiscal plan when the time is mature, and working with all the stakeholders there. So that's last year's report, and again, you can take a closer look, especially for new members. If you haven't got a chance to look into that there. In terms of update, we are still early in the process for FY25 budget development. So on the operating side, we're still collecting information, and on both revenue side and expenditure side there. On the CIP side, however, we already collected most, not all, but most information in terms of requests from different entities or project managers there. At this point there, just a couple of things to let you know, share with you that the preliminary general obligation bond supported projects requests are very high. They're kind of 2.5 to 3 times historical or projected funding capacity at this point there. For FY25, the request received so far, that's still not 100% requests, is about 165 million, and future years is up to 200 million a year. As we just mentioned that historically we have been approving 72 to 75 million per year based on affordability. So there will be some tough choice to make here regarding prioritization, and some of the project may have to get delayed or removed because of the realistic affordability. We just talk about the debt issue there. There's also other projects that's request designate revenues, and some of them are of concern as well. For example, there's watershed supported project there. Each year there's a demand between 16 to 17 million there between address those stormwater ponds and also the state mandates of NPDES permits there. And these are these are critical needs. They're essentially has to be taken care of one way or another. But the watershed is pretty much exhausted. So if we don't have any change on existing fee, then we either have to stop doing the project or shift those funding towards geo and other sources. Then, so that's going to be another major concern for FY25 and beyond. And transfer tax, as you all know, that's an important designated tax used to support multiple CIP projects, from school project to recreational parks, their fire projects, agriculture preservation, and that one unfortunately has been showing double-digit decrease in FY23. I think it's more than 30% decrease, and in the current fiscal year, that trend has continued. So that's another concern regarding the lack of funding to take care of everything that community wants or need. So I'll just pause there because we have limited time. I want to ask whether anybody have questions before I hand it over to a DPZ to share with you the highlights and update on the HOCO by design. Okay, if no further question, I will invite Mary to from DPZ to share her screen, and it's all yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Oh, great. Still right there. Okay, perfect. And I'm sure everyone can see my screen. Holly, you can see my screen, the presentation?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're doing well. My name is Mary Kendall. I'm a Deputy Director with the Department of Planning and Zoning, and I wanted to share with everyone an update on HOCO by Design, which is the county's new general plan. As Holly mentioned, this plan was adopted in October 2023 by Council, and it took effect on December 19th. So this is it. This is our new general plan. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what a general plan is, how we use it in the county, and as Holly mentioned, really just point out some of the key policies in the plan and highlight a few of the changes that occurred during the council adoption process and all of the various amendments that occurred as a result of through the council adoption process. So specifically, what is a general plan? It is a document that establishes a long-term vision for how and where the county will develop and grow over a 20-year time frame. There are a lot of factors that have to be considered as we think about growth. We have to think about things like transportation. How are people going to continue to get around the county as we grow? What type of employment opportunities are we trying to attract to the county through our land use decisions? What do we want the character of our future neighborhoods to look like? And what do we want to preserve as we move forward? What character do we want to make sure we preserve as we grow and develop in the future? And then we have to, of course, think about our natural resources and park, our environmental resources, and of course, our housing choices. What do we want our housing choices to be as we move forward? Are we trying to build in a way that encourages and allows more single-family detached homes, or are we trying to look for more diverse housing options? This is a general plan. This is our 7th general plan in the county, and it is a document that we do update once every 10 years, and it's required to do, and it is required by state law to do so. So what does the general plan influence in Howard County? So in a nutshell, here in the county, we use the general plan a bit like a roadmap. It gives direction to multiple county agencies about various topics, such as those that I just mentioned. But it also helps inform various other efforts. We use it to update the county's functional plans. Those are plans like the Walk Howard, Bike Howard functional plan. We also use it to update or develop new master plans, such as we're going to be embarking on a master plan for Gateway. We also use the general plan to help inform the county's capital budgets, which I know that's going to be a lot of your discussion here with this particular committee. So we do use the general plan to help inform future capital budget decisions. And perhaps what's most important, at least to the Department of Planning and Zoning, is we use the general plan to update our land development and zoning regulations. So once a new general plan is adopted, we go through our land development and zoning regulations to make sure our regulations can advance the vision of the plan. So basically, in developing this general plan, as Holly mentioned, thank you, we did an amazing amount of community engagement. It was a 3.5-year process that you can see started back in 2020. And not only did we use community engagement, but there's also data analysis and best practices. So all of that goes into developing a plan. And really, where the end of the process was the kind of council adoption process, which actually took about 7 months. But really, I'm just going to focus today on where we landed after the amendment and adoption process. So when you go about developing a general plan, basically it's trying to respond to existing and potential future challenges and opportunities. So in 2020, when we kicked off the plan, and these are certainly still challenges that we have today, the challenges that were in front of us were things like this county, we have a high demand in this county. There's a high demand for commercial, residential, and employment growth. We have a dwindling supply of undeveloped land. Climate change is a real issue. We need to learn to be resilient and how we can adapt to and mitigate the impact of climate change through our land use decisions. We have to make sure we're meeting our public infrastructure needs like schools, parks, and community facilities. And we also recognize we have a lack of affordable housing options. Housing costs are increasing and we have a limited housing supply. And there's been a trend to build homes bigger. The Housing Opportunities Master Plan, for those of you familiar with that, that was a process that the county undertook in 2019. But they found that only about 17% of new single-family homes that were built in the recent past were under 3,000 square feet. So there's been a trend in building bigger. So the fact that we have limited land supply and a growing demand, what do we mean by that? Well, in the county, we found that only about 2% of our land is truly undeveloped or unprotected. Yet, as you heard earlier, we have high demand. And so basically, we are largely built out. About 39% of the county's land has been permanently protected or preserved. Yet we have this high demand. So we could see, according to the economists who did a market analysis for us, in advance of this general plan. So the demand is we could see 31,000 new homes if we had the space to accommodate it, or 59,000 new jobs. So these were all things that were key factors as we shaped this general plan, HOCO by design. And a lot of this plan, because we only have about 2% of our land that truly is undeveloped or unprotected, so much of this plan focused on our redevelopment opportunities and infill development. So that's not necessarily targeting that undeveloped 2%. It's just looking for places that are already developed that could potentially be redeveloped to achieve kind of higher potential. So where does HOCO by design recommend we accommodate a good bit of our residential demand and employment demand? Well, it suggests we do it in these places that the future land use map calls activity centers. These activity centers are targeted in the eastern portion of the county. They're sort of these reddish, brownish, purplish colors. And basically, this map shows that in addition to these activity centers, there are about a total of 18 different character areas that this future land use map identifies throughout the county. These character areas are intended to just try to explain kind of what is the vision, what is the potential future land use for these particular areas. And a lot of the character areas are intended to remain fairly like they are today. And probably the most significant changes that you'll see are in these areas that we call activity centers. Activity centers are located primarily along Route 100. They're the Columbia Village centers. We also have 2 nodes along Route 1. And then we also have Route 40 and the Snowden area around Snowden River Parkway. Pretty much with these activity centers, all of the activity centers remained intact through the the amendment process. However, Elk Ridge South, that was an activity center when we went in with the draft plan, but that came out and that area has been prioritized for future civic uses. So when you look at these character areas and you really want to try to understand what area is changing in the county, you have to take a look at the ways in which they've been categorized. And as you can see, it's these activity centers that are really the areas to transform. So areas to preserve, areas to strengthen, they'll pretty much still look and feel the same as they do today. But areas to transform, that's where we're really looking to see change and target our growth and development opportunities. So this map basically shows you It's a kind of simplified overview of our growth and conservation strategy using the character area typology framework that I just showed you on the previous slide. So these red and orange areas, you can see them a bit more clearly. Those are the areas intended to transform versus areas to preserve, such as these green areas, which are identified as open space. Other areas to preserve is this sort of light green color versus the areas transformed. This is this light red, and everything else is in between. So what do we mean? What's going to happen in these activity centers? So currently, a lot of these activity centers are large, older shopping centers or older office/industrial parks. And what we envision those to be in the future are mixed-use walkable places that offer opportunities for affordable, attainable, and equitable housing choices, and of course, employment opportunities. We envision these places to be greener than what they are today. They'll be redeveloped with open space and stormwater management, and there could be the potential to reduce impervious surface just depending upon what is there today. These places can be planned with transportation infrastructure, multimodal transportation infrastructure, and of course, they're intended to be diverse. We want to be sure that there are housing options for everyone, for older adults, for people with varying abilities, young adults, and low and moderate income households. We're trying to create mixed income communities through these redevelopment opportunities. And throughout the amendment process, there was some specific language added into the plan that says we should be requiring these mixed-use activity centers to reflect home ownership opportunities and convenience retail and other local serving amenities. So there's interest in making sure that home ownership is a piece of our redevelopment plan. Also, through the process, we found that the county may need to seek ways to be a partner in a lot of these redevelopment strategies, because a lot of these mixed-use redevelopments can certainly be challenging and takes multiple partners coming to the table to realize them. So future growth in the plan, of course, it will still occur outside of activity centers, but a lot of that will be through infill and minor subdivisions. So the plan still does certainly talk about there is a future for continued single-family detached development, but the plan still has policies to allow the development of what's called missing middle housing types and accessory dwelling units throughout the county. And we will need to create zoning tools and incentives to increase opportunities for these housing types. So missing middle housing types, they can be generally close to the size of a single family detached, but they might have 2 or more residential units in it. So it could be a duplex, a triplex, a quadplex, or there's something like here, a cottage cluster, which you can see in this top right-hand corner. So this is basically a lot of smaller single family detached homes that are all clustered around a common green space. So the plan certainly does have policies and this was in there before the amendment process. It stayed in through the amendment process, so trying to create opportunities for these more diverse, smaller housing types. And ideally, if these housing types are smaller, you would think that they would also then be available at a more affordable price point to try to help address the affordable housing challenges here in the county. So accessory dwelling units. So currently our regulations only allow attached accessory dwelling units, but there is guidance in the plan that says that we should allow attached and detached accessory dwelling units throughout the county. However, there was specific language through the amendment process, clarifying language that was added, saying that we should explore a clear and predictable process and location-specific criteria for accessory dwelling units, including but not limited to lot coverage, lot size, setbacks, stormwater management, and parking. So basically, the ADUs will be dependent upon the lot. So they may not be appropriate everywhere, but through over the next few years, we'll be looking at what that site-specific criteria will need to be prior to allowing the development. So as it pertains to development, housing development, residential development in the rural West, so the rural West will still be constrained by a lack of public water and sewer. The rural West is outside of the planned service area, but there is still language in the plan that suggests we need to allow more diverse housing types out there. This could be accessory dwelling units, this could be duplexes, or it could be in the form of upper story residential, rural mixed use development, or small scale infill in areas known as the rural crossroads. The rural crossroads that were identified on that future land use map I showed you earlier, those are Lisbon, Glen Elg, and Highland. However, throughout the plan, we are still emphasizing the importance of maintaining the rural character of the rural West. So that all continues to be an important priority in the plan. So a lot of those slides focused on housing, but of course, as I mentioned earlier, there are various other topics that a general plan addresses. So I'll just bring up some highlights from some of these other chapters. And one of our chapters was called Ecological Health, which really focuses on the environment. And I think we already went in pretty strong, in my opinion, with strong environmental policies, but I think we came out a little bit stronger. So in this chapter, we talk about how we're going to protect our natural resources as we grow and develop in the future. And one of the policies in the plan was we certainly need to invest in environmental conservation programs. So not only are we going to grow and develop, we'll be looking at ways to preserve and protect some of our most significant environmental land and environmental resources. But also what came out of the plan was some stronger language around improving stormwater management and giving greater recognition and importance to the Climate Action and Resiliency Plan. Through the process, the amendment process, the Green Neighborhoods Program was removed from the what's called the APFO housing allocation chart. I'll show you that chart on a future slide. But basically through the plan but the plan still gives guidance that we should be seeking alternative development or some kind of flexible development standards if we're building on land with environmentally sensitive resources. Also, what came out of the amendment process was looking at ways to preserve agricultural land inside the plan service area. So a lot of our agricultural land has been preserved outside of the PSA. And then we'll be looking at ways to expand the scope of potential uses for the ag land preservation, for the ag fund. And they'll be looking for ways to let the ag fund support agriculture and agribusiness in the county. And then we had a chapter called County in Motion. So that's all about transportation. And the overall goal of the chapter is still to create a safer and more equitable transportation system. But as a result of the amendment process, there was an even stronger emphasis on walking and biking infrastructure. So making sure we have that as a part of our growth strategy, and of course, public transportation. And one thing that was added to the plan was a section about our BWI flight paths. So now there's guidance that suggests we need to pursue ways to reduce the impacts of noise and air pollution that's generated by air travel. And also what is really important to this committee is what came out of the process was to encourage the use of electric or non-polluting vehicles by county fleets. So that could be school buses, emergency vehicles, and we need to make sure that we have the necessary infrastructure to support those electric or non-polluting vehicles. In the chapter called Economic Prosperity, that's really focused on economic development and job growth. So through the amendment process, there was a stronger emphasis on the importance of commercial revitalization on Route 40, and that arts is a key to revitalization here in the county. In the plan, we are still focused on retaining the industrial land that we have today. So that's mostly on the Route 1 corridor, which you can see that is its own character area on the future land use map. And specifically also in this chapter, we talk a little bit about the Gateway Master Plan. So this redevelopment of the Gateway area, that's probably a place that will have a pretty significant fiscal impact on the county once that vision is realized. So that's one of our biggest redevelopment opportunities identified in HOCO by design. And it's about 1,000 acres or so. And then also in the economic prosperity chapter, we have an agricultural economy. We're proposing to sustain the agricultural economy, and through the amendment process, we suggested that we need to complete an agricultural master plan that focuses on how we best position our agricultural industry and also create an office of agriculture here within county. So then we have a dynamic neighborhoods chapter, and that's all about housing. So I know I talked a lot about some of our housing policies. So through the amendment process, we're still promoting the development of diverse housing types, still recognize for our future we need age-friendly and affordable options. But really, I think a lot of what came out of the amendment process was an importance of making sure we have opportunities for home ownership. We continue to have new opportunities for home ownership as we grow and develop in the future. Then there's a chapter called Quality by Design, which really focuses on neighborhood community character. So there's still a strong emphasis in this chapter about the character of future development. There's a strong emphasis on historic preservation and making sure we have a universally accessible public realm. But throughout the amendment process, what was reiterated was the desire to maintain various aspects of Newtown's character, such as open space. But we really need to evaluate the development process in Newtown. So there will be a Newtown task force convened at some point in the future to take a look at that. So a couple of other chapters in the plan. Chapter 2 is called the Growth and Conservation Framework. That's where you'll find all of our housing and job projections. And in that chapter, we emphasize the importance of maintaining the planned service area. There are 2 small bump outs proposed, but those are specifically to support the Howard County Public School System. There was a property they wanted to bring into the planned service area, and then there was one small property that got added into the water service only area. So no major expansions for any kind of significant development. And then we have a growth management chapter. That's chapter 10. That's where the plan provides a lot of recommendations for the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance Committee, or AFFO. So there's recommendations there that they should be evaluating and considering once they are convened. So for those who aren't familiar with AFFO, that's an ordinance that aims to control the pace of development so that we can have adequate school capacity and road capacity in relation to growth. So we'll be convening that committee in 2024 to really evaluate how these new development patterns, such as small scale infill and activity center redevelopment, how that could impact our school and road capacity differently. Plus, we'll need to be looking at ways how new development can help us better meet our pedestrian and bike infrastructure needs. And then we have a chapter that's called Supporting Infrastructure. And that's where we have presented many policies for our future infrastructure and capital planning needs. So guidance for parks and recreation, fire and rescue, water sewer supply, public safety, all of that can be found there. And there were some policies and actions included as a result of the amendment process that related to supporting our healthcare facilities as they provide critical services to our community. And then what's unique about this particular general plan is chapter 8, called our Public School Facilities Plan. So that's a chapter that really explains the relationship between new growth to the Howard County Public Schools school planning. So that was really important for our community to have a chapter unto itself that's focused on that. And there weren't a lot of significant changes through the amendment process to that chapter. So another key component of the general plan is this housing allocation chart. I mentioned it earlier. So basically, as I mentioned earlier, so this is about one of the ways that we control and pace residential development here in the county. So we have that AFFO test. And it's basically a 3-part test before any new development can occur. We have to make sure we have school capacity before development can proceed. We have to make sure we have road capacity. And then we have to make sure there are housing allocations. So basically, these housing allocations pace residential growth by those character areas. These character areas are found on the future land use map. And those are all geographically based. So you can see, and then this housing allocation chart looks out over a 14-year period. I know the plan looks out 20 years, but the allocation chart only covers this 14-year period. And you can see in the activity center column, right, that's up to 9,000 new units over the course of this 14 years. So that is clearly where we're targeting the most amount of residential growth throughout the county. Other areas, all other character areas, could see about 365 units a year and about a total of 5,400 units over this 14-year projection. The Rural West, these allocations are the same as Plan Howard 2030. So expecting to see about the same pace of growth and development out there, which is on average, which would be allowed. Not that this is what we've seen. I think Holly's going to show you some slides as it pertains to this, but this is saying no more than 100 units per year and up to about 1,500 total over this 14-year period. And then we'll continue to see development in downtown Columbia through 2040. One thing, the Gateway, I mentioned earlier, Gateway is one of the most significant redevelopment opportunities after downtown Columbia in our future. And Gateway is not included in this allocation chart quite yet because those growth projections will be determined through the master planning process. So once we determine what that is, that we will then need to amend or update this particular allocation chart. Now, one thing that is very unique to HOCO by Design is we added this used to be the Green Neighborhoods column, but this is now an affordable housing column for purchase and rental because we have such a need for affordable housing in the county. What came out of this process is that, well, we need some kind of incentive. There should be an incentive or some sort of density bonus that's given to developers who go above and beyond the moderate income housing unit requirements to create purchase and rental affordable housing options. So in the near future, we'll be establishing a working group, likely concurrent to our AFFO committee, to determine how this column will actually function and how we'll pull housing units from it. This is the AFFO allocation map. So this map shows how character areas are geographically distributed as presented and characterized on the allocation chart. And overall, when we look at what the total growth potential is in HOCO by Design over the next 20 years, we see a potential increase for approximately 27,000 residential units. Blue is residential, and then green is the jobs. But of course, this growth potential is dependent on future zoning changes, especially in those activity centers, right? If you recall, I mentioned earlier that the activity centers, a lot of them are current single-use older shopping centers that currently don't allow residential. They will require zoning changes in order to allow residential. Also, with HOCO by Design, we put forth a plan for the Route 1 corridor. And again, it just emphasizes that we're looking to preserve Washington Boulevard as an industrial, employment, and transportation corridor with only 2 areas targeted for redevelopment. That's down here around the area around Paddock Point, and then another area that's here around the Dorsey Mark Station. And we recognize in this particular plan that the county may need to explore opportunities to establish something like a redevelopment authority or a similar entity to facilitate redevelopment here in this area. So just a couple more slides. Thank you all for hanging in there with me. So as I noted earlier, HOCO by Design, it is a plan, right? It's a plan that sets a vision over the next 20 years. However, it's not our regulations. So we now have to go through the process of updating our regulations before most of these policies can be seen on the ground. So part of that will occur through our comprehensive rezoning process, which is what we have to do to make specifically any map changes, any zoning map changes. So that takes about 3 years. And then we're undertaking a master plan for Gateway. And that's going to be about an 18-month process. And that will also help inform specific zoning changes that we need in Gateway. And then I mentioned earlier, we'll have to convene an APFO committee, Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance Committee, within 1 year after adopting the plan. So a lot of these things have to occur, and we have to complete all these processes before we see any of these policies take effect. And then even once we get through all of our regulation and zoning map updates, it will still take another 2 to 3 years before a lot of development plans are seen on the ground, because the site development process takes about 2 to 3 years. So just keep in mind that all of these changes, so I'm saying all this to say that all of these changes presented in the plan, they're not going to happen quickly. Local government is one aspect that drives growth, and that is done primarily through our zoning and land development regulations and various types of incentives. But we also need willing property owners. They make decisions about their land. They decide whether they want to develop in the future or conserve it. There has to be a market demand, right? We have to have the market conditions in order to facilitate and catalyze that development. And we have to have developers and lenders at the table who are willing to do this redevelopment and new development. Many development projects, especially the large mixed-use redevelopments, they require partnerships, the lending community, and a developer willing and experienced to move a project forward. So thank you. I have both my contact information on the slide in addition to our director, Linda Eisenberg, who couldn't join us today. But if anyone has any follow-up questions, you are welcome to reach out to us.
Thank you very much, Mary. It's a comprehensive review of really
Yes, it was a very comprehensive.
in a short period of time. So I really appreciate. I know, like in the committee, there are some members that are pretty familiar with development issues. I want to open up before we move to the next topic. That anybody have questions, please just unmute yourself and ask questions there. Well, Mary's still here. I just need to make sure unmute yourself.
I think I saw Barbara Lawson. She tried to raise her hand and you're unmuted.
Oh, yeah.
Am
Yeah,
I
you
on
can
mute?
unmute yourself. Go
Okay.
ahead. Go ahead.
So did I understand you to say that our developable land is now down to 2%?
The 2%, so that is the amount of land that is undeveloped and unpreserved.
Okay.
So that means that there's no preservation easement on top of it, and it hasn't seen any kind of development activity on it.
So I guess the last few years, my understanding is that we've been talking that there was less than 7% developable land. So are we saying now we're down to 2%?
Well, right, that is what we put forth in the plan. I'd have to look to see what was included in that 7% before. I think that 7% may have included some right-of-ways in that calculation, but I would have to kind of look at the data because I don't want to say that we suddenly went from 7 to 2% overnight. So I know at one time we did have some data where we said we have about 7% remaining, but I don't know if we deducted things like right-of-ways from some of that.
Yes, I think I would like clarity on that because we've actually used that figure in our reports. And when I've done, presentations or explaining the situation to people, I've used that figure. So I would like to have a more precise figure. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Hi, Todd Arterburn here. Following up on Barbara's, if the undevelopable or if the undeveloped land has gone down by some material amount, one would expect that the number of projected housing units would have gone down in concert with that. But in fact, I think the projected housing units have gone up pursuant to this plan. Is that because of downzoning? That has resulted in higher yield for the developable land that remains, or how do we reconcile that?
Well, so projected units, so that is based on demand, right? Are you talking about the development projections, which we're assuming about 27,000 new units in the county over the next 20 years?
It wasn't a demand issue. It was a yield issue on the developable land. So if the developable land has gone down and the number of projected units has gone up, which is what I believe I've heard you say, then that can only happen if the yield per developable remaining acre has gone up.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of this plan is proposing redevelopment. So one of the last slides I showed is that we're projecting that this plan, if we get through after a comprehensive rezoning, right, then we could potentially yield up to 27,000 new units, but that will require some rezoning primarily around those activity centers. So a lot of our new development, new units will come from redevelopment. So it's not necessarily within that 2% that is undeveloped or unprotected. It's on lots that are already developed, but they've been identified for redevelopment potential.
Understand.
Okay.
But in the infill development world, those are considered redevelopment by your classification. But infill development in the east is extremely difficult based on the new environmental restrictions that have been imposed by the council. So how are we going to get increased yield given the new environmental requirements for infill development if infill development is going to provide a significant number of additional housing units?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, a lot of those details we're really going to have to work out once we get to comp rezoning, but a lot of these development projections were based on land use modeling. So we have a software called Community Viz, where we were able to plug in different scenarios saying if X, Y, or Z occurs, what is this development potential here? But I'm not saying you're right, it's not going to be easy. That is absolutely correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So good questions. So I'll move to the next one, which is also a DPZ presentation. And I'll pretend to be deaf. So I'll go over that. And also if there's questions there, depending on what's the nature of the question, may be able to address part of that. So as most of committee member already know that every year DPZ will also provide some update about demographic and land use trends. And these might kind of address some of what Todd's question earlier regarding the development trend there. So we'll start by a recap, providing a recap of the fiscal impact analysis that was shared with committee last year by Jeff. At that point, and by the way, thanks to committee last year for taking on a special task there to provide input on the fiscal impact analysis for Hoku by Design. It was extremely helpful. And the conclusion of the fiscal impact analysis is that the new growth as laid out by the Hoku by Design is expected to generate a very sizable positive fiscal impact to the county. And it's partly attributed to the kind of unique revenue structure in Maryland, where local government tax not only properties, but also collect local income taxes there, which is directly tied to where people live. So this new development with new population growth there, that becomes one of the drivers for the most critical taxes that the county collects currently. There's also some sizable one-time revenues that's directly related to development, that's including school surcharge, road excise tax, and recordation and transfer taxes there. There are, on the cost side, as we remember that schools are the most significant costs there, and people probably already know that. And the challenge is try to maintain and rebuild existing infrastructure as Mary mentioned earlier that, and Barbara hinted earlier, the county has very limited undeveloped land currently, so a lot of the future focus will be shifting to redevelopment. Even so, it will not likely to see a continued growth of the new development. It's probably just more mitigate the slowdown of the development to provide some sustainable growth, but even that is not likely to be at the level that we experienced in the last few decades there. So, but Hoku by Design will hope sustain some kind of growth in the next couple of decades, hopefully, once all the zoning regulation gets materialized there. And this just recaps the projection shared with the committee about a year ago, that overall it was looking at more than $1 billion of net positive impact there in the next 2 decades there from Hoku by Design. And average is about 58.8 million a net impact to the county, with revenue minus expected cost associated with those development there. Regarding the population, this is a graph have been shown before, that the county's history has shown that the county's population took off like essentially mid-1950s there, and has been growing pretty fast until about 2 decades ago. And since 1970 to 1980s there, where the population growth peaked, it has been slowing down. It's still pretty fast. But when it comes to the 2000s there, it's become about a more moderate 1.6% growth per year, basically in the last 20-year period. Now, the red bar represent the projections by DPZ and based on census data and the development models there. And with that projection, the trend is likely to continue to see a slowdown. And one thing I want to point it out is when Jeff ran this models there, he hasn't factored in the Hokubai design and also the gateway development impact there. The reason is that a lot of zoning are still in the process, and the master plan for gateway is still in the process development there. So some of the factors are not too clear in terms of timing. So these represent essentially before Hokubai design get fully implemented, where it will likely to be. As you can see that we're likely to see a continued slowdown, population growth, and future development if the Hokubai design is not in place. This is a graph that's really telling from my opinion, and I think some of you have seen an early version before. It's basically look at different age group growth throughout the time. The one on the very top, the orange block, represents 65 plus. This is a group probably represent the fastest growth since like two decades ago there. So in 2010, that's represent about 10% of the total population. By 2040, that's expected to take about 1/4 of the total county population. So I think we just have to continue to keep in mind the population. Different population have different needs in terms of services there, and then they all have to be addressed when we look at the long-term financial and the service operation projections or future planning. Here's just another way to look at the age group. Again, you can tell like the second half of the graph with successful longevity and people aging in place, 55 plus clearly are seeing a much faster growth compared to other age groups there in the next, so far and also continuously in the next 2 decades.
Hey, Holly.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt in the middle, but
No problem.
the slide before this really struck me, and it went by so fast. The school age population is shown as being almost stagnant from 2010 to 2040. Am I reading that correctly?
That's correct. That's correct. And I think just based on existing land without additional redevelopment, et cetera, there, then because we have much less development there, and with the aging of the population and people go through the school system there, the projection currently showing that both school and other age groups they're seeing very moderate growth in the next couple of decades there. In some cases, almost flat. But the 45 of 65 plus there, these are the groups that are showing much bigger growth there. But again, this hasn't factored in the Hokubai design, which is going to generate a little bit more growth for every age group on that. But even so, it's going to be very moderate, because I know our school system will be here, I think, a couple weeks from now, and they typically include some student enrollment projection. Even that, I believe last year when we see that, you see a very moderate growth of students in the next couple of decades there. That's definitely slowed down dramatically, and the last few years obviously have been decreased or flat.
So what strikes me though, as it relates back then to the development process, is we can talk about AFFO being a 3-tier process and so forth, but AFFO is really about schools, and school closings are what drive the allocation of units by sector. But this is basically showing there's no growth in the schools population. So why is AFFO being almost exclusively focused for delaying purposes on school issues, when school issues aren't causing the problem, because we are not increasing our school age population?
So that's a good question.
Yeah. So I just want to jump in. I don't have the answer to your question, Todd, but I can tell you that once the AFFO committee is convened, that's a part of what they look at, right? How is our new development, really impacting school population and school capacity? So that's all something that we're going to have to kind of evaluate and dig in a bit more. The specifics, when you just look generally at this data, I mean, I can't tell you which school district it necessarily impacts. So I think that to answer your question, you would need a little bit more nuance school by school district by school district.
Yeah, not by sector or by zone as opposed to district. It's all one district, but
yeah.
But it seems to me then we need to somehow find a way to better integrate APFO, which holds up the pace of development on purpose by design. If in fact there's no growth in the school age population, how can APFO rely on the school enrollment projections and numbers to slow things down when there's no net growth within the system? Then it's just an allocation issue of students per school as opposed to total number of students.
But Todd, it's Ellen.
Yeah.
Okay. The way in which districts are closed are based on the capacities of the school, which are not equally distributed around the county.
I know that. That's my point.
No,
yeah.
So when you look at it like this, it's like looking at a big wheel of cheese and not looking at the sector where school age population actually is, where there is overcrowding because of the capacity of the buildings, not because of the number of kids necessarily directly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right. Of course, and then the zoning and
where you have families with multiple children versus families with small children, families with children that are on their way out of the school system, areas where there are younger families with children moving up. But you are correct in saying that over the last several years, we are not seeing the growth that we saw in the past, which was at like a 2.2% rate for families with children. And what we're seeing is that has slowed or has not, we have not recovered to pre-COVID numbers. Okay. And what we're also seeing is that this growth in the 60, in 55, 60, 65 plus, whatever those numbers are, that's not really growth. It's people who aren't dying. Okay. So it's not more population. It's just the distribution of the population. So when you look at the way these lines work out, the boxes, this is only one way to look at it, and it's not the way to look to answer the questions that you're talking about. We have to look at it based on where the capacity is that's filling the schools and where the capacity is that is not, as opposed to on a total number, because it's such a big number that we say overcrowded at 10%. 10% in a small school is like 20 kids. 10% in a high school is 170 kids. Do you know what I mean? So we can't get it from this number. And what's really happening is we're shifting the allocation of a population that is not growing at a strong rate, and certainly not growing at a rate that's seeing increased revenue from it, because as people age, their revenue tables. It doesn't keep going up. And if we're not getting in people at the end that are on an upward trajectory, then that will impact revenue as well as the total growth. Does that help?
No, it does. And Holly, I apologize. We've hijacked your presentation here, but
no problem. I think both of you make a really good point, because I feel like these are important points. I think, Todd, what your observation is more about in total, right? The different age group have different trend there. So you're talking about the overall growth of students is no longer a major drivers in terms of the kind of needs there. So I think what you're suggesting, and there might be internal capacity reshifting among schools there. And which is really a good point. And what Alan was saying, that's true, but in reality, it's really by individual schools there. So measurement itself there that's represented. So, but I agree, and as Mary mentioned earlier, that it's a issue worth taking a look at when we talk about AFFO legislation, and there's opportunity to take a look into this.
But
Yep.
the other thing to look at, and as we're talking about AFFO, we tend to think of this in terms of being a school issue, but it's really about overall infrastructure. And with Columbia coming on to 60 years, we're looking at having to make investments in infrastructure to support what we already have here. So looking at how we apply AFFO is, to me, going to be one of the most serious questions we look at as we go forward, because we are in a different place.
Right. Let's hold on the thought on that. We might go back and visit.
Yeah, you're doing overall global look at stuff. We don't need to break down things into little teeny tiny pieces yet.
All right, thank you both. Let's keep it moving. This is good. These are good discussions there, and you all both touch on really critical points there. And this is just another chart to show that. The diversity of the county, I think, again, people living here are very familiar with that. The county has been much more diversified today compared to 20 years ago. At that point, and I think it's in 2000, in 2000, it's actually dominantly non-Hispanic white. There today, some different minorities there combined represent the majority of the population. So in general, it has seen a portfolio change that's basically saying the community have becoming more diversified. And in that trend, we're not that different from Montgomery County, Fairfax County, which have been essentially showing the same trend in this area. On the next couple of slides, basically saying the same thing, is showing the last 20-year period by different population growth there. Here's also a different way of showing the graphic difference there. Now, this is related to a discussion that's made earlier. I think, again, both Todd and Mary touched upon earlier regarding the new building. So the building permits issued in the last 20 years, it's actually have been stable for a while, but then in most recent years has seen a drop. I do want to point it out that 2022 and 2023, according to Jeff, those 2 years numbers are extremely low. In fact, they are the lowest in the last 40-year period of time. Last 40-year period, these are the lowest. So it is a little bit alarming. It appears to me it was driven by multiple factors. There are the land availability issue we talked earlier. There's the legislative issue, probably, about the limiting factor. There's also the market economic situation considered. So everything combined, we do have been seeing a permits drop significantly there. Again, with the local by design and the following zoning and development plan in the next couple years or decade, hopefully the trend will get reversed a little bit, but it may not go back to the historical level, but hopefully that could see some recovery, because this is a little bit worrisome when we talk about the future revenue generation possibility there. Here's the components of the different type of houses there. No surprise in most recent years that the apartment has become a major drivers of the new permits there compared to single family, which continue to become a smaller portion of total. This one is showing the subdivision development there. I think some of you probably are more familiar with this. There are a few remaining large subdivisions there. This Wellington Farms, Westmont, Chapel Gate, Maple Lawn, etc. These are mostly single family and single detached units there. They will actually significant decrease once once these large subdivisions are completed. So after that, there are not really new large ones left in the pipeline. So one more thing that I mentioned earlier is just we have to focus more on redevelopment and new legislation to free up a little more capacity there. And this is another telling graph there folks have been familiar with, as it shows the housing portfolio changes there. 20 years ago, the county was dominantly single family for the building permits issued. Now it's reversed. It's apartment become the majority of the development there, and that might continue to be the case going forward. Residential pipeline here is just another way to, but showing different stage there. So with exception of the existing that to the left there, what to the right is just in different stage of development. As we mentioned earlier, that the average actually are representing a decrease from the historical level of the new homes there. So we are actually looking at things are moderating, not go back to the historical level. Here's again showing the single family drop while apartments start to increase in terms of new development or new permits issued currently. This is the graph I think Mary touched upon earlier there. This is just showing the 5 different planning areas, Elk Ridge, Columbia, Southeast, Ellicott City, and the Rural West there. Again, just the Rural West is just everything west of the planned service line. So the lower density and mostly residential development there. But again, we have very limited lands left for any of the development there until we kind of do legislation rezoning that's going to follow in the coming years. New unit development potential. Here's another way to look at the different type of house, but also by area. As people mentioned earlier, Columbia definitely will be one of the drivers in terms of new unit potential. Here's another way to look at that, but it's just showing different stage of development. And this one is this one was showing the permits different stage of the development there. So so they're in the permitting type stage, or they're unbuilt and they're in process, or these are not developed at all. This is another map. It was just show that DPZ maintains a land use map that's continually updated as new properties are developed. And by the way, the map can be found at the county's GIS interactive map website, and users actually can zoom into the parcel level for details for anybody's interested. This is the graph I think Barbara mentioned earlier that was showing like less than 7% still left there. Later, we'll check back with DPZ, try to clarify the concept of undeveloped land there. But I think as Mary mentioned earlier, this including now preserved ag land there. So maybe there are a little bit discrepancy regarding the concept of undeveloped land. Job trend. Well, the county has been able to maintain fairly strong and stable job growth in the last 2 decades there. In general, average about 3,500 per year. That really has been a blessing, and it's actually provided a lot of vibration to the county's economy, and it directly or indirectly transferred into the county's revenues. In terms of the type of jobs there, no surprising, the longest bar was represented by professional and technical services there, followed by retail, trade, healthcare, social assistance in terms of total jobs there. That's why the county actually, part of the reason that county weathered the pandemic relatively well, even at the beginning onset of the COVID there, partly because we are more resilient and most of the jobs there are not touched that much by the pandemic, and some even benefited from a technology viewpoint on that there. And the county have very solid and diversified job base, but it has specific strengths in those higher paid professional jobs there. And that's also measured of job growth in this period. That's basically the same story. By the way, I realize some of my slides might be overlapping with Jennifer John said EDA is going to do a business panel discussion a couple weeks from now. But that they may talk about some more information there. But unemployment rate of county remains very low. That's the lowest line in this graph compared to Maryland and state. And this is unemployment rate. Ours is the third one. We only have 1.6% unemployment rate. Labor market is very tight though. That makes it a little difficult to find, recruit people and to retain people. Non-residential development jobs here, the forecasting 1750 annually. That's lower than the past 2 decades there, but keep in mind this has an effect in the local by design. So hopefully with the development, we will regain some of those job growth. So that's just a quick review of what Jeff has been put together. And I want to, even he's not here because he's sick, I want to provide credit to him. And if anybody have questions, please feel free to ask there. I'll take down the notes what I cannot draw. Also, I'll be happy to talk back to him and maybe invite him back to the committee in one of the future meetings there. Any questions? Okay. Well, I think we still have half an hour left, so let's go back to future SAAC meetings there. So next week, just FYI, we have no meetings. The second week of January, we're going to take a quick break because of the scheduling conflict for some of the speakers there. And after that, on January 17th, EDA will try to organize a business panel and provide important and an interesting update about different economic data and also from business perspective, what they see on the trend or what's the needs there. And also Jimmy from Realtors Associations kindly agreed to provide a briefing from their viewpoint, look at the real estate market, which I think is going to be of interest to this group, and also it's going to help us help inform the revenue projections there. HCLS was originally scheduled that date, but I heard that Angela, if you're still there, I think that I heard that you will do a board vote that day, right? So would you like to be shifted to January 24th? I can make that arrangement.
Holly, thanks for bringing that up. I'll talk to Yusuf and get back to you this week.
Okay. No, this is a library.
Oh, the library. Gotcha.
Sorry, yeah, library. I can touch base with Angela.
Angela Brady, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't make it clear. Yeah. And following that, we will have the education day. That meeting is on January 24th. So our school partners will talk about superintendent proposed budget that will touch upon the enrollment growth, operating budget, capital budget, and the blueprint task force. A representative will provide a briefing just for, and also community college and library probably also that day. Blueprint task force, one thing to highlight is that in line with what the committee mentioned last year about developing long-term planning and including all the partners, this is one important step forward because based on executive order, the blueprint task force already met multiple times last year. And it's going to provide some better highlights regarding what does that mean for blueprint, because you all heard about this hot topic in the last couple of years, why people showed big concerns about whether it will be key drivers about the cost side and whether the state is going to provide funding to cover that. So hopefully that will shed some light on that. And after that, we'll do economic outlook. We have 2 economists in the committee, and they'll share their insight on that. And the county is in the process doing fee studies. So if we have certain information available, we'll provide a heads up to the committee. And after that, we will do the revenue and debt projections there, multi-year projections there. So finance and budget will do this presentation based on information available at that point. And after that, we will take a few meetings to go over the recommendations to allow the team to discuss and frame the recommendations there, and then a small team out of the full committee will try to take a tab about the drafting a report and bring it back for review and vote. And by the way, when it come to February, most of this discussion is going to be chaired by Vice Chair Steve Pointed. I'm very glad he agreed to help me again, and he's going to help chair the meeting together with the committee members there and go over the items there. So
Holly,
yeah,
Todd here. One quick question. We touched briefly earlier today on the whole issue of, I guess, rehabilitation of the whole stormwater management system in the county. We talked about it a little bit more last year. Where does that fit in this? Because it's a gigantic number.
Yeah, that one on the January 29th, when I say possible fee discussion, I was hoping to including some of that as well on that. So I know folks are still in the process of looking at modeling to see what does that mean. But as you said, it's actually a pretty big issue. I think that some of the committee members saw our DPW folks here before, and they actually showed the picture about the ponds repair, that how the pipelines are deteriorating, and those in critical conditions alone, $140 million of project to get addressed in the next decade or so. But if the stormwater fees get drained, then what are we going to do? How do we shift the cost, or do we make adjustment to the fees? These are critical issues there. So if we get the model ready, that will be an opportunity to talk about that as well. But I agree, this is actually a very important issue, because these are, I think some of the project there is not discretionary, to put it that way. It's kind of maintenance. It's speak to what the committee said before regarding the county's infrastructure needs. Yes, there are demands for the new project, but there are so many maintenance issues there that we really have to address and find ways to address. Yeah, we'll try to touch upon that in future meetings on that. So that's just the general meeting schedule, and I think we still have a little bit of time for whoever's still here. Thank you so much for bearing with us. We may just do a quick going around the table in the order. So when it's your turn, can you just unmute yourself and then just talk briefly who you are and how long you have been in the committee, etc. So starting with Todd.
Punch back in. Todd Arterburn, I think this is my 6th, maybe my 7th year.
Wow.
I know. Local business owner, largely retired at this point, still have a few things in the works, but glad to be participating again.
Thank you, Todd, for coming back. Dennis, I don't know whether he logged in successfully. Okay, if not, I'll reach out to him later. He is a new participant. He is the acting CEO of Columbia Association, so I'm happy to have him join us this year. Dr. Clinch?
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Richard Clinch. I've been on the committee a long time, more than 10 years. I'm an economist. I work at University of Baltimore. I do a revenue and personal income forecast. I moved out of the county a couple of years ago, but I'm still on the committee.
Thank you for joining us. I look forward to your presentation in a couple of weeks from now. Howie?
Yeah, hi everybody. I've been on this committee. I think this is my 3rd year representing Farm Bureau. We appreciate agriculture being included in all these discussions. And my wife and I farm here in Glenelg. We board horses and we have a small beef farm, and we make about 200 acres of hay.
Yeah, thank you for joining us again. Ellen?
I'm a former Board of Ed member, and I served here as a non-voting member on the committee before I left the board. So I'm not completely sure how long I've been on the committee. In my other life, I'm a data analyst and data scientist with Standard & Poor's, primarily in energy and environment. But I'm glad to be back.
Thanks, Alan. And also So appreciate, Alan, that in the last couple of years there, you have been instrumental in terms of the wordsmith for the for the final report and put a lot of time for narratives added. So I appreciate that.
Oh, thanks.
See?
Yeah, hi, Steve Hunt. I've been, I will say, off and on a part of the board since I want to say 2015. I had a break for a couple of years in the early 2020s, but glad to always be here, be a part of the group. Professionally, I'm a director at a government contractor, but I'm also a member of the Howard County Board of Appeals. So yeah, I do quite a bit on the local level as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Is JC Hendrickson there?
Yeah, hi, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, JC Hendrickson. I've been on the committee, I think, since 2019, so four or so years. I live in Elk Ridge. By day, I work in criminal justice policy in DC at the federal level, but I like to stay engaged with community work, so that's what keeps me coming back.
Yeah, welcome back. Both you and Steve have been here for quite a while, so that's good to have. You are familiar with the process. And Steve Hunt, I'm sorry, I forgot to say that you have been here for a long time, so really appreciate you come back. And Dr. Irani.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Doris Irani. I'm the work at Towson University as an economist, and I've been on the committee for a couple of 3 years, and I live in Howard County.
Yeah, thank you. And also look forward to your presentation. I really enjoy your kind of macroeconomic part there, which is really, very good together with Dr. Clinch, who's more focused on the local personal income part on that. So we really enjoy both of you. Thank you. Jimmy?
Yes, hello. I've been serving with you guys for 2 years. This is my second year. And I serve as the president-elect for Howard County Association of Realtors and a couple of other real estate boards around the Maryland Realtors boards. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to serving again.
And Jimmy, also this year, look forward to your presentation as well.
Looking forward to it also.
Yeah. And Barbara.
I think I've been on the committee now for either 9 or 10 years, and I probably represent the nonprofit sector of our community, and I'm currently retired and live in downtown Columbia.
Yeah, Barbara, thank you for your leadership. I think you and Steve pointed probably have been in the committee longer than me. Steve.
I don't know.
Hey, Steve.
I joined fiscal year 2013. So
yeah, you come here before me.
13. This is 13 years now. So Steve pointed out, again, that's when I joined the committee. Banker by day, president of Capital Bank. I've been a resident of Howard County for a number of years and enjoy, helping out in the community however I can. And I really enjoy this committee and the work that we all do.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, and thank you for agreeing to leading the committee again. My name is Holly Sun. I'm the committee chair and the county budget administrator. Josh, I think he has a conflict today.
Stepped off. He had to step off, I think.
Yeah, he only could be on for about 45 minutes today.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's go to our education entity representative, Angela. Angela Braid.
Hi, my name is Angela Braid. I've been involved with the committee for the past 4 years, I believe. Off and on, I usually partner, actually 6 years, because I partner with either Valerie, who is the fire president, or with Tony Akins. So this year I'm on first deck, and we'll be at all the meetings. Thank you all for having me. It's a joy to be here.
Yeah, thank you for serving this year. I mean, we know each other for a while, for a long time. So I'm glad you're official member now. And we have actually multiple new friends there from education entities there. So Dr. Stone.
Good afternoon. My name is Ty Stone, and this is my very first meeting. So I'm very happy to be here, excited to participate. I am currently the interim CFO at Howard Community College, and I just moved to the area from Tennessee less than a month ago.
Welcome on board. I hope you enjoy everything here. Dr. Lu.
Hello, everyone. I'm Yun Lu. It's also my very first meeting. Nice meeting everyone virtually. Happy New Year. I'm the Howard County Board of Education Vice Chair. Also, I work as a mathematical statistician for a federal public health agency. I have been living in the county for 12 years. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. And Darian? I think Darren was here early. Would you like to unmute yourself? Okay, he was here early, so maybe just because of another call or something. And he is the budget executive director from our school system. So glad that he's able to join from the school management team. We also have advisors from the county representing both the executive branch and also the legislative branch. So Angela.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Angela Cabellon, Chief of Staff for County Executive Ball. I just want to say on behalf of the executive, welcome to all of our new members and welcome back and thank you to all of our existing and seasoned members.
Thank you, Angela. Owen?
Hi, my name is Owen Clark. I'm the acting county auditor. I've been with the county auditor's office since 2018. I've observed these meetings for the past, I think, 6 years. So this is my first year in this capacity.
Welcome on board. Raul? Raul may not be able to make it. Maybe also Brandy. Brandy, are you there? I think she also have a conflict there. Rafiq?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rafiu Ihile, Director of Finance for the county. I have been on the committee now for, I would say, in different roles, but for at least 5 years, but I've attended the meeting for over 11 years. Thank you.
Yeah. And Rafiu and myself will jointly provide some presentation in early February regarding debt, bond credit rating, and Jennifer Jones.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jennifer Jones, CEO of EDA. I've been part of these meetings for about, I guess, 4 or 5 years. But previously, I was on the county executive side and was representing that side. But now this is my first year representing EDA. Thanks.
It's very nice to see you back, Jennifer, in a different capacity there, and also look forward to the EDA presentation together with some business partners there in the counties. The economic development is extremely important, so I'm really, really glad you were able to join us. So with that, actually, I finished all the business agenda. I just wanted to open it up. Does anybody have any questions? Anything we haven't touched upon? All right. And by the way, I just want to apologize again for the technical hiccup in the beginning of the meeting there, and we will smooth it out there. But I do want to thank the DTCS team in the back. They always do a lot of work to help with address all kinds of technical issues there. And also our interpreter, Sherry, who's always with us on that for these public meetings there. Paul, and our analyst who is our contact for the logistics for this committee. So, and a lot of other people who try to make things work on it. So I want to thank the committee, but also thanks everybody who's making things work. So I will see you all on January the 17th. And by the way, if anybody have questions there, feel free to drop me a note, an email, or if you have my phone, feel free to text me. Thank you all. We'll see you next time.